Albion? More like
Need a weapon.
Fun fact, the day this video uploads marks 1 day short of a full year since my Fallout 4's Master Chief video, which not only shows us how terrifyingly fast time is passing us by, but also that it's been long enough I can try the same challenge in a different game, and best of all, this time, it doesn't even require mods. For anyone who's unaware, Fable 2 has clothing based off the Master Chief's Mark 6 armor from Halo 3, along with an energy sword and assault rifle, so really, the game is just screaming for me to do this. Obviously, when I get these weapons, I'll be using them as much as I can, but Master Chief is also an avid user of just about any firearm he can get his hands on, so really any gun is appropriate, at least up until I get the assault rifle, and let's just say getting it took a lot longer than I initially anticipated. If you know, you know. Now with all that out of the way, let's begin. Beginning life as a child in the streets of Barstone thankfully doesn't take too long, given how many times I've played through this part of the game. I'll also just be breezing past it, as all you really need to know is that I used the pop gun for both encounters with the bully and the beetles, because I also made a rule that the only melee weapon I can use is the energy sword. I would have allowed fists as well for what it's worth, but for some reason Fable 2 did away with the unarmed combat from the original game. Anywho, after we collect the 5 gold, we purchase the music box, and Rose does half of my work for me as she sets up the Metal Gear reference for this week's video.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Speaking of references, Lucien uses a very particular phrase to convince me and my sister to assist him in his experiments. Well, everything quickly goes from bad to worse, as Lucien's way of dealing with poverty is by just killing the poor. Getting knocked out the window when Lil Chief has his first chance to impersonate an ODST, and to be honest, he does not appear to be off to the best start. Thankfully, we're saved by Teresa, and we begin our training off screen as we become child soldiers that will one day be crafted into a super weapon. Now that we're all grown up and ready to leave the camp, I can finally get things started proper. Also, no, you will not be seeing his face. This is not the Halo series, thank God, so I won't subject you to that. One thing that I will be taking from the series though, is that until I get my armor, I will be assuming the role of the Chief's alternate persona, Master Cheeks. Around here, I also changed the dog's name to Arbiter, because why not?
Come, let us hurry to the river.
Having access to a sword and a crossbow will obviously not do, as I cannot use either of them. Normally, if you follow the main quest, you will just grab one from Barstone once you have dealt with the bandits, but I do not wish to wait that long, so instead I hold off on entering the guild and make my way along the beach until I come close to said bandit camp, simply because there's a chest nearby with a rusty flintlock pistol. It's by no means a good weapon, but at the very least it's strong enough to take out the few beetles that litter the caverns leading up to the Chamber of Fate. I ignore the very obvious plot light for a moment as I bypass it and open the chest in the back, which contains my outfit, along with Hal's sword, or the energy sword as I'll be calling it from here on out. While the weapon may have been a pre-order bonus, and then later a DLC item, don't let it fool you, it is by no means pay to win. I don't even know if that concept existed when this game came out. The energy sword only does 4 more damage than the rusty iron sword you begin the game with, so it's not going to remain effective for very long. On the bright side, I can begin to offset the damage, as for once in a Fable video, I can actually level up and improve my stats. That means, for now, my plan is just to save up my experience points until I can improve my physique, and what better way to level up than by giving Thag and his men a very close up and personal inspection of my sword. Like I said, it's not that much stronger than the rusty iron sword, but for now, that is still enough to cut through the bandits with ease. The energy sword does have 3 augment slots, which I believe is worth mentioning, so the opportunity is there to increase its damage, but to skip ahead a little here, I completely forgot that this was an option, right up until I got the assault rifle, so by that point, it didn't even matter. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. For now, Thag makes himself known when he depletes Arbiter's shields, so I immediately take my revenge as I just combo him to death rather easily. After a few strikes, he will begin blocking, but he'll stop this if you either shoot him or just roll around for a bit. Shocker, the first pseudo-boss fight is incredibly simple. Who would have thought? With Thag dead, I kill the slaver and free the nearby slaves, because apparently I cannot help myself, and now it's off to Barstone where I make the most appropriate name change.
Citizen shall be known to all as Master Chief.
You would think the armor would be what's weird, but no, to me the strangest part of all of this is hearing all of the British folk randomly say Master Chief throughout the rest of the playthrough. It happens just infrequently enough that every time it does, I have to stop and think about it for a moment before carrying on. Anyway, I meet up with Teresa, and after a very brief blacksmithing episode, upgrade to a flintlock rifle, and can now begin the long task of getting the assault rifle. Just like the rest of the items, the rifle isn't part of the base game either, but rather than just being an item you download and use right away, I instead have to go to Knothole Island and make my way through 2/3 of the main questline there before it becomes available. That sounds like more work than it is, but there are only 3 main quests on the island, so yes, only 2 quests stand before us on the rifle, but for whatever reason you're forbidden from playing through the DLC in one go and only gain access to the other quests after progressing far enough in the game's main story. In other words, I cannot get the assault rifle until I am just over the halfway point of Fable 2's main quest. This sucks, I am not going to sugarcoat it, but it cannot be helped, and therefore it is just something we must deal with. If there is one positive about the situation, it's that at the very least the dungeons you have to travel through for the Knothole Island quests are not only short and sweet, but they are also more puzzle focused than anything in the main story, so it's a welcome change of pace. Granted, when I say puzzles, I would like you to imagine the biggest quotation marks possible, as I wouldn't describe them as very brain taxing. You're just hitting buttons and switches in specific sequences, but still it's a little different than combat. Speaking of combat, I do fight more creatures here, those being the Shadow Men, which are just model swaps of low level bandits and Hobbes, so no problems here as the energy sword is still able to lunge right through them. There is a mini boss at the end who is really just Shadow Thag, and once he's out of the way, we can retrieve the Sun Totem for the people and see the most unrealistic part of the video as we bring sunshine and heat to Northern Ireland. That's my business here concluded for the time being, so it's back to the mainland where I stock up on potions of the health and experience variety. Also, because I know someone will mention it, yes, I am aware of the experience glitch you can do with potions, where if you drink them from your inventory and then pause the game quick enough, you can effectively drink the same potion again to vastly increase experience gains. But outside of doing it this one time to show it off, I will not be doing it again in the run, as it literally breaks any kind of difficulty the game has in 2, as you could potentially max out your stats before ever leaving the market if you're patient enough. With that out of the way, it's on to Oakfield as we leave Barstone and begin putting the sword to good use once more. Spartans were made for dealing with insurrectionists, so dispatching all of these bandits is totally in line with the character. Just trust me. While the energy sword's damage is not the greatest, as I have mentioned, I did forget to bring up the fact that it is at the very least a very fast weapon, so it does have a higher DPS than most of the rusty weapons, so it may prove useful for just a little bit longer than I initially thought. Once I reach the broken bridge, it's time for Master Chief's first swimming lesson, as I have to jump into the water below.
Oh, look! Another traveler!
Getting dragged into the nearby cave, and it's my first encounter with Hobbes, except not really, because of the shadows from before. If you squint hard enough, you can pretend these are grunts, and it makes the whole portion seem a lot better. Other than the fact, no Halo player in their right mind would waste a charge from an energy sword on a grunt, but I digress. With the final grob skewered, it's back out to some fresh air, and after the bandits who taunted me on the bridge are taken care of, we can arrive in Oakfield and see about impressing the abbot. This is, of course, one of the 3 renown checks in the game, so I just need to become more famous. Outside of having a statue constructed of oneself, the only other option is to hunt down Dash and his men, as it's the only other quest available, as you cannot return to Barstone at this point. It's a simple quest in that all you need to do is go to the Rookridge Inn and shoot it up. Unfortunately, my recording cut out here, so you will not get to see more mindless bandit slaughter, so for that I apologise, and hopefully what you're seeing on screen will suffice. Now that I am famous enough for the abbot to give me the time of day, it's down to the cave where we meet Hammer and begin one of the more tedious quests. As Hammer fills up the jug with special juice, I am tasked with fending off the seemingly never-ending hordes of Hollow Men. Good thing about them is they are meant to have strength in numbers, and to compensate, they are very brittle. Problem is, it's very rare enemies ever attack you all at the same time, plus you are invincible as far as I can tell when performing a flourish, so I kind of just start cutting them down without a care in the world. The mini-boss at the end requires a little more strategy due to the fact that if you get too close to him, he begins charging up a shock AoE. As he has to charge it briefly though, I can still roll in and get a few swings, and then retreat before he hits me, and then while I'm at a distance can shoot him, and then rinse and repeat until he explodes into bones for Arbiter to play with. With that done, Hammer gets to blessing the water before being interrupted by one of the monks informing her that the abbot, her father, has been taken hostage. At this news, she charges off, dropping the urn, and I am only now just realising after 13 years that we collected that water for seemingly no reason. The abbot is then killed by Lucian's men, and honestly, good riddance. This happy death also gives Hammer a reason to join us, and we are now about a third of the way through the main game. This being the second time I've played through the game this year, I am only now realising just how short Fable 2 really is. For now, I'm supposed to head back to the guild, but I make a slight detour to the Barstone Graveyard to help out S&M with their flood problem. It's a simple quest, just kill 100 Hollowmen. Seeing how I did just that in the Wellspring Cave, this is an absolute cakewalk. The experience for all this undead murdering is nice and all, but the real reason is for the small, albeit worthwhile renown gains, as like I said, there are 2 more renown gates in the main quest, so I will need to partake in some side quests sooner or later. Back to the plot, it's off to Brightwood Tower to recruit the mage, which also acts as our first encounter with Lucian's men. This is the point where the energy sword is beginning to fizzle out in terms of its damage output, as the Spire Guards have more health than your average bandit or Hollowman. That's not to say I can't still kill with a thing, far from it. Hitting most enemies with a flourish will knock them down, allowing for the player to walk up and stab them while they are lying down for an instant kill. This works for any melee weapon, so if you really wanted to flex on them, you could do it with the rusty iron sword you start the adventure with. When they're on the ground like this, Arbiter will also partake in combat, as he will sometimes run up to them and tear out their throat for an instant kill as well. This is basically a tangent to explain why you may see a lot more flourishes from this point on, anytime that I'm using the energy sword. After taking so long to explain my tactics, we are too late to save Garth, meaning I have to head back to the market and pay Lucian's old butler 1,000 gold for the location of his master's diary. Naturally, it is right underneath a forest troll, because of course it is. No clue how the troll didn't destroy the book if he was underground with it when he burst out like that, but oh well. The trolls are about as traditional as it gets when it comes to boss fights, and by that I of course mean you wait for them to attack, easily avoid said attack, and then take pot shots at their glowy bits, and then rinse and repeat. I personally find rolling to be less effective than just slowly circling the troll, as more often than not when I roll to dodge his shockwaves, I end up going straight into them. With the troll dead and sent back to the comments section, I dig up the diary, and now it is time to unleash more justice on the unassuming bandits as we make our way to Westcliff on the quest aptly titled Road to Westcliff. Other than the introduction of the new Highwayman bandit class, they do not pose that much of a threat, as bullets and high-powered energy can still make quick work of them, so long as they don't start zipping around all over the place. Speaking of enemies who hate staying still, their journey to Westcliff also includes our first run-in with Balverines. The energy sword is next to useless on them. I guess plasma is still weaker than silver in a fantasy setting, so it's time for Chief to do what he does best, shoot strange creatures that he doesn't really understand. While fighting the Balverines in the Howling Halls is a timed event, and you really just need to hold them off long enough until Hammer creates a bridge, I don't wish to leave a job half finished, so I make sure to stay until they're dead and stop respawning, or in other words, finish the fight. Exiting the halls drops us right at Westcliff, and after introducing ourselves to the Crucible's commentators, we are once again informed that our fame does not reach the threshold, and as such it's back to side questing. It's alright though, as by completing the road to Westcliff, we have just unlocked the second main quest of the Knothole Island expansion, so it's back there, as now they are complaining there is too much heat, and that I need to make it rain. It's quite similar to the first quest, except there are actual enemies to fight other than just shadowy versions of them. There are more puzzles involved, as well as traps. These fire ones in particular continued to mess me up, as they were an almost guaranteed instant kill despite all the points I had in toughness. It doesn't take long before I acquire the MacGuffin and can return to the chieftain, putting the assault rifle within reach, or so I thought. In the shop where the rifle is, rather than buying items with gold, you instead have to trade for them with specific items, and after completing that last dungeon, this present has now appeared in the back that requires 1 pure experience extract. For anyone wondering, that is a high quality experience potion, a rare item to be sure, but not something that should be incredibly difficult to track down. Well, say that to my hour and a half's worth of footage trying to find even one. The most likely place to find one is the potion shop in Barstone, or one of the potion traders that wanders around the Fairfax Gardens. Naturally, I tried both vendors right away, and neither of them had any. I then waited 7 days in the inn and tried again, and nothing. I did this for about 20 minutes, and in between even bought out most of their inventory so they would restock, but not once did they supply the potion that I needed. So I did some research online, and apparently they only spawn in the Barstone potion shop if the town's economy is high enough. Okay, makes sense, so I went about increasing the town's economy by turning the Master Chief into the Master Landlord, as I bought out a few of the stalls as well as the potion shop itself, and then lowered their prices, as that is the fastest way to improve the situation. Again, more week-long naps in the bar's cryo chamber, and nothing changed with either merchant. I even tried searching some of the shelves in the store now that it was my property, as they have a chance, albeit a small one, to spawn there, but once again, nothing. Getting desperate, I bought a 4-star treasure hunting book for Arbiter, and then used it to get the 5-star treasure hunting book near the starting camp, so he could sniff out high-value treasure, as sometimes they can be dug up. But to avoid wasting any more of your time, while I did find some good loot to sell, I never found any pure experience extract. I then went and completed 2 side quests, those being the defense of the Temple of Light and defeating Ripper and his men for Farmer Giles. The former is literally the Wellspring Cave quest from before, the only difference is there's a fight with some shadowy figures near the end, and the latter is exactly as it sounds, more bandit slaughtering. Take a wild guess what happened when I returned to the shops. That's right, nothing. To make the rest of this long story short, after digging through some old forums from 10 years ago, I found multiple accounts of people saying that the item will not begin appearing in shops and traders' inventories until after you have rescued Garth from Lucian. Sure, I could continue searching around the land with Arbiter in the hopes he digs up one, but that would all be down to luck at that stage, which by going by this point in the search, has not been on my side. It's not a huge deal, but I really wanted the weapon before entering the Crucible, so this kinda sucks, but I suppose it can't be helped. The Crucible was honestly a fairly simple experience, as it usually is, but it also hit me with a reality check in the very first round when I couldn't kill beetles with a few slashes of the sword. Needless to say, the weapon is far past being useful, so more than likely when I pick up the assault rifle after the spire, the energy sword will just be resting on my back for show. The steel flintlock rifle did work though, easily what carried me through to the end. You could make the argument that by not using Halo weapons the run is technically invalid, and I do see the reasoning behind that, but if we were going to enforce those rules, I would never have made the video in the first place, as the challenge would have failed the instant I had to shoot a flit switch or fight a troll. I feel it goes without saying that character-based runs like this, Lincoln and Big the Cat, should not be taken seriously. Back to what's happening on screen, during the chaos I managed to level up my dexterous styles to the point where I can now use the target aiming perk. If all you non-Fable players want something to compare it to, think of it like real-time VATS from Fallout. Or honestly, Fallout 76's VATS system. Just like VATS, it allows me to target specific body parts for either increased damage or a way to hinder my opponent. Shooting the head does extra damage, shooting the hand-holding weapon will knock said weapon out of their hand, and shooting a target between the legs will stun them for a considerable amount of time, as you might expect. This makes dealing with human enemies a lot easier, as well as Balverines, as I can quickly aim for the head and take them out in a few seconds. The final encounter against the troll is nothing too special. Much like before, I just circle the thing and tap the Y button anytime I see red. I even managed to beat him in under the par time, without even really trying. With the Crucible behind us, it's off to the Spire, where we lose our weapons and armor, and I make another realization. From when we were a child until now, it has been, I believe, about 10 years. I understand that's a decent amount of time, but why has Lucian aged so horribly? I only bring this up because there's about to be another 10-year time skip, and this time, he doesn't age a day. Regardless of Lucian's mystical hyperactive aging ability, I take every opportunity to disregard the Commandant's orders, as it's the right thing to do and saves the most lives. I think. Once the time skip is over with, I meet up with Garth, who removes my Fallout 3 limited edition Paradise Falls necklace, and now it is finally time for the return of Master Cheeks. What I have to work with for the battle in the Spire is a steel clockwork pistol. It's normally just an okay weapon, but combined with the precise aiming ability I brought up earlier, it becomes pretty devastating. Crotching headshots are enough to thin out the crowd, and should I miss either one, 5 shots to the torso is enough to take down your run-of-the-mill Spire Guard. When it comes time to face the Commandant, I thankfully don't need to listen to the sound from before, as I'm able to defeat him without getting knocked out. Who would have guessed appropriately leveling up my stats is in fact a great way to stand up to stronger foes. It may seem like I am skipping right past the Spire section, as most people probably remember this part of the game lasting forever, much like the prison segment in the first game. Well, turns out I got through the whole thing in less than 30 minutes. It's just the amount of unskippable cutscenes and dialogue that make it feel like an absolute slog. Arriving back in Oakfield, and as soon as I retrieve my armor and sword, the first place I head is the Fairfax Gardens, and you guessed it, the Pure Experience Extract is right there, just waiting to be purchased. Once I buy it, I come straight back to Knothole Island, and finally trade it in for the assault rifle. The weapon's damage may seem lower than you would expect, but you also must keep in mind that it can fire 24 shots before reloading, plus any bonuses it picks up from my skills. This is where I finally grab some augments for my weapons. Nothing too fancy, just ones that make them do more damage. How much more though? There's no way to check as far as I can see, but I'm sure it'll make a difference. For what it's worth, the first place I go to test the weapon is another run through the Crucible. Goes without saying, it absolutely decimates everything in my way, and as a result, I substantially improve my times on just about every round. The aiming ability that got me through the Spire is essentially no longer needed, as not to jump the gun here, but I don't think anything could take all 24 bullets and hope to survive. With the weapon tested to its max, it's time for me, Hammer and Garth to make our way back to Brightwood Tower, and just like before, we are assaulted by Spire Guards, fake Commandants, and floating upside down pyramids. I thought the Crucible would be the ultimate way to get my bearings with the rifle, but it turns out coming here would have been just as effective, as when Garth begins charging the Cult's Gate, we are assaulted by a seemingly never-ending swarm of Spire Guards. Much like the clockwork pistol, aiming for the body is just as viable, probably even more so now given the amount of ammo. Pretty sure this version of the weapon must be based on the Combat Evolved variant of the assault rifle, given how fast it is just tearing through people right now. The fake commandants proved to be a little annoying, mainly due to the fact some of them seem to have Ultra Instinct, as they will just dodge right past my bullets without a care in the world. I have no idea why they don't activate this all the time, and it doesn't appear to be like a consistent thing they can just start doing, as some of them would dodge past one bullet and then just get immediately lit up by the ensuing onslaught after the fact. Once Garth gets the portal ready, I stay behind to kill a few more, and I genuinely think I got them all, as the reinforcements just stopped. I was under the impression that they just kept spawning in a way to make the player use the gate right away. Just like in Halo, teleportation is not without its drawbacks, as it malfunctions and causes us to briefly pass out. The strange gentleman who both saved and kidnapped us warns about banshees hiding out in the Silent Hills, but it only takes the tiniest amount of fog to roll in for him to forget his own advice and get immediately banshee bombed. Fortunately, the Arbiter is nearby as always and grabs the key to my cage from his mangled corpse. The banshees are in the fog and they are indeed fast and low, but thankfully I am well prepared for their little children, and after they're out of the way, can one-cycle them thanks to the speed and damage output of the assault rifle. Judging by the banshee's lack of health, I'm going to assume it's from Halo Infinite. A few more of them get destroyed as I push on to Bloodstone. There was the troll at the end, but I am so sick of fighting them already that I just easily walked right by him and continued on my way to the town. This also marks the final renown gate that requires 20,000 renown, and seeing how we are just a little over 10,000, I will need to do some side quests. First up, it's helping Sam and Max out of another pickle. Simply put, more hollow men are harassing them in the well in the marsh, and once they're effortlessly brushed aside, I must contend with yet another banshee. Just like the others, its children aren't faster than my bullet, and then the mother gets finished off with a few more rounds right into the hood. Short and simple, that's how we like it, so I followed up with another of similar variety, where this colourful individual sends me to clear Cave of Hobbes. As you might expect, as I am sitting on end gear weapons and stats, Hobbes, no matter what their level, are a complete joke. There is a slight twist after the eradication is complete, in that the man who gave me the quest was in fact working with the Hobbes and wanted to, I assume, eat me, so he goes to attack me and one shot to the head causes him to glitch out and rigor mortis all over the cave floor. All I need is about 3,000 more, and as luck would have it, the final part of the DLC is opened up, so I made my way there to put things back to the way they were when I first arrived by freezing the place over by getting the final totem. This temple mostly has me just following this single glowing orb around as I whack or shoot it until it gets where it needs to be. There are of course a few enemies here and there, but they are just more of the old shadow creatures who were not ready to deal with the heat I was packing today. Remember when I dodged that troll in Wraith Marsh a minute ago, because I was bored of fighting them? Well, looks like the game took offense to that as I am now forced to fight one in the end of this cave. Again, it's not difficult, it's just repetitive. I mean, I guess that argument could be made for most combat by this point, as I am just effectively mashing the Y button. But I don't know, shooting smaller enemies is just more fun to me than slowly circling a troll for 5 minutes. After he is dealt with, I grab the final totem, and then give the power back to the people, and essentially give them all godlike powers, as they may now have mastery over the weather whenever they see fit. But that's no matter to me. What's important is that I am popular enough for Stephen Fry to give me an audience, and naturally, he just wants me to do his dirty work by taking the Dark Seal to the Shadow Council in Wraithmarsh. Unlucky for the Council, I have prepared for this moment for a long time, as guess what they want me to fight before meeting them? Shadow puppets. Headshots galore as well as some spray and pray works in my favour before I can descend to meet the shadows. Once more, Chief's a nice guy, so I hold onto the seal and age myself up. It's not a huge drawback. For one, you can't even tell anything has changed because of the helmet, and two, you can reverse the process after the credits roll anyway, so it's ultimately a moot point. Back to Reaver, and I'm warned it's the point of no return, which is fine by me, as by this stage it was 3 AM in the real world, and I wanted to go to bed. Well, it's more Spire Guards, but this time it's very much in my favour, or at least more so than usual with this gun, as since this is introduction to Reaver's character, all of the enemies are above us, and therefore it is wise to just shoot them rather than charge them with your melee weapon, which of course is very welcome. Reaver helps a little bit here and there, but make no mistake, the assault rifle is what's getting us out of here alive. When we do make it outside, we meet with Garth and Hammer, and now, right at the end of the game, can all heroes finally come together to take down Lucian's pyramid scheme. Hammer and Reaver stay down below to fight the guards, and me and Garth are up top. While he zaps the thing to reveal its weakness, I just pick off anyone I can see, especially any who even think about getting close enough to poke Garth with their swords. Not to sound too confident in the weapon's skills, but I genuinely think it could one-cycle the shard if it didn't put away its glowy bits after sustaining enough damage. The reason I think this is that when it drops to 1/4 of its health, it stays in attack mode for the rest of the fight, and as soon as I noticed, I just let loose with the rifle, and the thing exploded within seconds. That was pretty much the final boss of the game, so now it's just cutscenes and semi-scripted events until the credits roll. After we all head up to Hero Hill, we do a little fusion dance before Lucian swoops in and not only kidnaps the others, but also depletes Arbiter of his shields. Don't worry everyone, he will respawn. Any minute now.
Were it so easy.
After we get shot, we wake up in the dream sequence, and like hell I'm shooting all those bottles again, so I just hop straight back into bed to skip to the nightmare sequence, and after filling myself with dread, get to watch the game recount the journey. Can confirm this has more of an impact if you did not decide to shotgun the game in a single sitting like I did. With the flashback over with, I get to confront Lucian for the final time, and after draining his shield with the power drain, can finish him off with a single shot. I am then given the choice of what I want to wish for, and as I have been doing things the morally right way, I chose to bring back everyone who was lost in the Spire's construction, ending the game, and sort of proving you can beat Fable 2 as Master Chief in a weird kind of way. Obviously, not being able to readily get the assault rifle from the beginning put a bit of a damper on the early portions of the run, but all in all, I still had a great time because this video spawned from the idea that I was going to play Fable in my spare time anyway, and after noticing we were pretty close to the 1 year anniversary of the Fallout 4 video, felt it was too perfect to not do. Next Fable video, whenever that might be, will more than likely be can you beat Fable 3 without increasing any skills, which will surely be a treat as I haven't fully played through Fable 3 since 2011. Regardless, that's going to be in this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like, and you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe. Try to have one of these videos every week. My name is Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.